Hey everybody, Aimer back with another installment in the big ranking list. We're right smack dab in the middle of the C- area. Let's just get it started. And we begin with number 97, Season 1, Episode 14, The Short-Tailed Spy. The IMF must protect a professor who recently defected from two rival enemy agent groups who intend to kill him, in such a way that the group led by the younger leader, Fetyukov, is discredited. This is a cult favorite among the Mission Impossible fandom. I know why. I personally find it rather plotty and slow-moving. I feel that it is another one of those neither fish nor fowl episodes, meaning that it's impossible to tell at any given moment whether it's supposed to be a Mission Impossible episode with a romance kind of tacked onto it, or is it a romance episode that's shoehorned into a Mission Impossible episode. The character of Shtemenko, who is kind of Fetyukov's rival in this, is either a wild card or he's a third wheel in the whole process. And that further makes the episode seem a little bit schizophrenic to me. That's why I even struggled to rate it as high as this myself. Not really a good one from where I sit. However, it is better because it does have that cult favorite status. Hans Gudegast is good in this one. Barbara Bain is great in this one. She's allowed to emote. She's allowed to show feelings, and I freely admit that that part of it is very, very good. This is probably the most meaningful of all of the romances, if you want to call them that are on this show. And I think that that's probably why it does appeal to a lot of people. Number 96, Season 7, Episode 2, 2000. The IMF must recover plutonium stolen by physicist Joe Collins for sale to an underworld figure named Haig. This is another remake, basically, of previous episodes like Operation Rogosh and Invasion, with the new twist that there's a third group that's looking for the MacGuffin, or the critical information, instead of just having said information be extracted from the mark about where to look for what the IMF is looking for. There's nothing really new here that we haven't seen a bunch of times. And the IMF seems to have infinite resources at their disposal in order to complete the mission here. And that's always kind of problematic to me, because it does seem like they're kind of beating up on a schmuck who's completely overmatched. Although in this one, Joe Collins is pretty intelligent and doesn't really suffer from lameness or schmuckery so much as the IMF is just really determined to get the information that they want. This one is better than The Short-Tailed Spy and other ones before it, in my opinion, because it does have some interesting wild cards. Despite the fact that it's a recycled plot, the writers and producers did try and mix it up a little bit to make it different from the previous episodes that this derives from. Also, Vic Morrow as Joe Collins is quite entertaining throughout the episode. Number 95, Season 3, Episode 11, The Freeze. The IMF must get Raymond Barrett to lead them to his hidden loot from a robbery before the statute of limitations expires, by convincing him that he's miraculously gone to the future. This one is a fairly predictable pennies from heaven plot that I feel that the mark falls for too easily. There's quite a bit of lameness within this character. He just basically gets taken for a ride by the IMF. Now, ordinarily, I would add to that complaint that the IMF is ganging up on a schmuck here. But, frankly, Raymond Barrett, the character, he schmuckifies himself without a lot of help. He just dives headlong into what the IMF is trying to do. There is a neat glimpse into the future here, which is kind of fun, but other than that, I would say that it's a pretty ordinary episode. I do feel that it's better because 2000, Short-Tailed Spy, other episodes we've covered here, because Despite the fact that it's a little ordinary, the IMF pulls a very, very excellent Kansas City shuffle here by making Raymond Barrett think that one thing is going on to really kind of cover up the actual, the actual con that they're trying to pull on him, so to speak. And I really like the way that the IMF uses Raymond Barrett's own momentum against him and, guiding him in the direction where he would go anyway and using basically his single-mindedness to their advantage. I thought that was really great. Number 94, Season 2, Episode 13, The Astrologer. The IMF must protect a dissident being brought back to his country and make sure the microphone he carries never reaches there. David Hurst is one of the main antagonists in this episode. I'm sure he's a nice man. He's a good actor. He was in the test case, which I mentioned a little bit lower down on the list. He drops my rating a notch. I don't know why he doesn't seem to fit as kind of the ideal or even close to the ideal villain for the show. Another problem I feel is that the villains in this aren't really even bad guys, so to speak. Not in the traditional sense. It just seems like a day at the office for both sides. The villains, so to speak, are just foreign government officials. They're just trying to do their jobs. And the IMF is just doing their jobs. Also, Peter Graves is largely absent from this episode. He's there in the beginning, and then we don't see him until towards the end of the episode, which is really kind of weird. I do say that this episode is better than the previous ones because it does have Steve Einert as the other antagonist in the episode. He normally gives an episode a boost just with his presence. He doesn't get a lot of screen time to make a major difference, but when he's there, I don't know why, I just kind of feel his presence, improving the episode. I think that this is also a very neat example of the IMF working backwards with the end in mind. They can kind of picture, okay, here's what we need to have done. Let's work backwards and figure out how we get ourselves there. I always like those kind of plots. Number 93, Season 2, Episode 4, The Bank. The IMF must put neo-Nazi Alfred Belzig, who preys on people trying to get from east to west and takes their money, out of business. This one is low on the action end of things. A big problem is that most of the plot revolves around surveillance of a vault and a safety deposit box in that bank vault. There is a nice touch at the very end, visually. One of many villain gets what he deserved moments, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. James Daly, who plays Belzig in this one, he's okay, but he's kind of one-dimensional here. He's completely a lame schmuck here, unfortunately, Daly as Belzig. There is not a lot of difficulty in this mission, almost none, and the IMF seems like they're in total control in this one, which puts it kind of in the average category. Better than the previous ones because there is good use of a guest agent in this one in an actual convicted bank robber, Paul Labar. And as I mentioned, the ending is really, really creative. If you're watching this list, you've probably already seen how the ending is, so I hope I'm not spoiling it to anybody. But basically, there's a passage and the wall is bricked up, and all of a sudden, James Daly is looking like, what the heck happened here? So that is kind of neat. Also, it's another good end-in-mind plot, like the previous one. Number 92, Season 7, Episode 20, The Pendulum. The IMF must thwart the plan of the nebulous Pendulum organization to disrupt the U.S. government. This one has some suspense, and it is an agent-level plot, not just a spy story. The IMF has to earn its victory here. Dean Stockwell is the main villain in this one, the main antagonist. He's not totally lame in this one, but he's close, and the ending isn't terrible. Of course, yes, a lot of people out there are looking at this and saying, how in the heck is this episode rated so high on your list, Amer? Well, it does have a lot of recycled and lame shtick. That's for sure. At this point in the series, how can it not? And it does, and its main problem is definitely that it's so overblown and borderline comical at times. I will grant you that. However, it is better than, just as good as the episodes that we're talking about right now, because visually it is quite good. Dean Stockwell is good as Gunnar Malmstrom, the character in this episode. And the final act has some really good action in it. There's a scene where one character, Bach, we see him and he's got a double, and that is played out very well. And there's some suspense towards the end. There's enough entertainment value to merit this one being in the middle of the pack. That's what I feel. Number 91, Season 5, Episode 16, The Missile. James Reed is an enemy agent who is after a key guidance system, which the IMF must substitute and allow him to steal. Circumstances outside of the main plot put Dana at severe risk. This is another episode which, on the surface, seems like a decent idea. The execution, I feel, is lacking a little bit. The subplot with Dana has absolutely nothing to do with the main mission, and it just seems like a way to hide the fact that the main plot really isn't enough to fill the hour. David Shiner as James Reed is not completely wasted, but I don't feel that he's used very well. And Leonard Nimoy, strangely enough, is in kind of the filler role that's usually reserved for Peter Lupus as Willie. There's not a lot of rewatch value to this one at all. But it's better than previous episodes that I've talked about because, again, there's a good role for Leslie Warren in that Dana subplot. There's good guest stars in David Shiner, who I already mentioned, but also John Beck as the psycho who takes a liking to Dana because she resembles a girlfriend that he murdered. And Willie actually gets to use his strength to save Barney from a trap. So, again, some high spots there. But, unfortunately, the episode, I think, just doesn't come together the way that it should. Number 90, Season 5, Episode 15, Catspaw. After Barney's brother is murdered, the IMF must establish a link between the corrupt local police chief and mob boss George Corley to bring them down. This one is a decent plot, but it's a slow mover, and it just seems like another one where the IMF just have to put their targets through a series of steps, and then they'll get the desired results in the end. It's a good hour that features some very excellent African-American actors. And there's a romance subplot for Barney with a character named Millie, and that does keeps things interesting. But it kind of falls apart towards the end because there's kind of what I feel is kind of an unnecessary twist that just kind of rips it all apart. I do feel, though, that this episode is better than the previous ones because Abby Lincoln as Millie is great amongst a very, very good quality guest cast. Willie and Barney both get enhanced roles in this one, kind of at the expense of Paris, as Nimoy was kind of mentally checking out at this point. But still, good to see that every once in a while for them. Number 89, Season 6, Episode 10, Blues. Music promoter Gorman and his right-hand man Belker are funneling tons of money to the syndicate, and the IMF uses Gorman's recent murder of an upcoming musician to bring them down. This one is entertaining enough, but when Greg Morris sings, as he does, about wasting time by channeling Otis Redding, I heartily agree that that happens a lot in this episode. There is a bunch of padding. The IMF seems to be caught flat-footed a couple of times at least with, plot twists that they don't expect, but they should have. It's your standard engineered public confession plot. And again, it's right out of the typical separate and mislead playbook where the IMF makes the two heavies believe that each has sold the other one out. There are major valleys in this episode, action-wise, and even if it hit the mark and kind of stayed level, this wouldn't be a whole heck of a lot higher. It's better because among the separate and mislead plots, it does at least have competent antagonists, and the method that the IMF uses to kind of drive a wedge between these two guys actually does make sense. You've got William Wyndham and Ed Flanders as the two antagonists here, and they're both definitely quality actors. And, of course, we get Greg Morris as a jive turkey. Number 88, Season 3, Episode 17, Doomsday. Industrialist Carl Van Damme has managed to obtain plutonium and will auction it off to the highest bidder. The IMF must get the plutonium and put Van Damme out of business. This one has a fair bit of action in it. It moves at a pretty decent pace. Alf Jellin as Van Damme is lame and kind of schmucky. He's practically doomed from the get-go in the dangerous game he's playing. It is a fairly straightforward plot, though, which seems to be the case for just about every episode that features Wesley Lau, who plays the scientist Thorgan in this one. You pretty much know what you're going to get if he's in the episode. Similar to Alf Jellin's previous outing in The Phoenix, Rollin and Cinnamon basically do the same thing. They keep his character occupied so that Barney can do what needs to be done. So there's a lot of similarity there. This one is better because of Barney's work. He does a whole heck of a lot of things in this episode. You know, deal with elevator shafts and, yeah. I mean, you get dizzy sometimes just following him in this one. And, of course, it has the OG, the original Mission Impossible cable drop. And on behalf of all of us fans on the series, eat your heart out, Tom Cruise. Barney did it first. Number 87, Season 3, Episode 18, Live Bait. Deep breath. There's an American agent named Orrin Selby who has managed to become an important official in a foreign country. But Security Chief Kellerman suspects him of being an American agent. And Kellerman has captured another agent named Marceau who knows about Selby and is being tortured for information. The IMF must protect Selby and neutralize Kellerman. There are a lot of adjectives I could use to describe this plot. If I want to be polite, I will say that it's intricate and cerebral. If I want to be a little more firm about it, I would call it convoluted and overbooked. And I lean towards the latter. There are so many characters all trying to one-up and outmaneuver each other. And frankly, there are still some plot points that really don't make sense to me. Yes, I'm still confused about the whole Stephanie turning on Brock thing. If you watch my review, you know what I mean when I say that. So, yeah, it's an entertaining hour, but gosh, it can be a little bit difficult to follow. And I almost don't blame casual fans who are like, it might not even be worth it. However, I do think it is worth it. It belongs here. And the reason is, it's better because you've got Anthony Zerbe as Kellerman and Martin Sheen as Albert Brock. And they are both excellent. At least in this episode, if you just keep track of those two guys and what they're doing, you'll maintain the gist of the episode and you won't be completely lost. But boy, it seems like the directors and writers go out of their way to make sure that you try to get yourself lost in this one. And that wraps it up for the lot of episodes that I gave a C- or thereabouts over the time that I did these reviews. Thank you guys as always for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And please leave your comments about this in other episodes. Thank you again. I will see you next time.